Hi everybody, today we're in downtown Independence. Just right over there to my right is City Hall. And we're here because in the last video that I recorded, we were at the old Independence Landing, which is where the Saints were crossing the Missouri River to go to Clay County as they were being driven out of Jackson County. And we were reading the account of the youngest daughter of Bishop Partridge, and she mentioned Lilburn Boggs. Now, he's the one that signed the extermination order, and until I moved to Independence, I didn't know that he lived here. He wasn't here while he was governor, but he lived here both before and after becoming the governor of Missouri. So I did some research. I found out that this is the site of his first home in Independence. This is marker number 11 of the Missouri Mormon walking trail. Boggs home, Maple Street, lot 5. Site of the early home of Lilburn Boggs, merchant, state senator, and governor. Mormon Peter Whitmer Jr. operated a tailoring shop here in 1831. And Peter Whitmer Jr., by the way, he's one of the 8 witnesses, and he's buried here in Missouri. This was put in place by the Missouri Mormon Frontier Foundation. So this is one of 14 plaques that make up the Missouri Mormon walking trail. Okay, so I did a bunch of research. As time goes on, I plan on learning more and more about these sites. But this is the timeline that I put together of Lilburn Boggs. He served in the War of 1812, and then in 1826 he moved to Independence. And the site that we were just looking at, that's the site of his first home. Okay, so 1826, that's 5 years before Independence was identified as the location for the city of Zion. And then after that, he became a state senator, elected 2 different times. And then, sorry, I got to change my phone here to light theme because it's hard to see. There we go, that's better. We're just coming up on the public square, the site of the Jackson County Courthouse. That's what this is right here. Okay, and then in 1832, that's when he became lieutenant governor. And at that time, he was living here in Independence. It wasn't until he became governor that he moved to Jefferson City. But while he was lieutenant governor, he was here. And that is when the Saints were being persecuted, and the mobs were attacking the Saints. It was during this time. 1836, he moved to Jefferson City. And then a couple years later, that's when he signed the extermination order. So we'll pause right there, and I want to read just a couple things that I found. So I'm not going to read what I read in the last video, but basically it was Emily Partridge who said that everything that was going on here with the mobs, it was basically under his direction. He was the man behind the curtain with everything that was going on. And I went to History of the Church, Volume 1, and it talks about some of the key events that happened in the lead up to the expulsion from Jackson County. And a lot of them happened right here, where we're at right now. So there's this section called, I'm looking for page numbers, this is page 390, Demands of the Mob. is the name of this section. On the 20th of July, and of course this is in 1833, on the 20th of July, the mob collected and demanded the discontinuance of the church printing establishment in Jackson County, the closing of the store, and the cessation of all mechanical labors. The brethren refused compliance, and the consequence was the house of W.W. Phelps, which contained the printing establishment, was thrown down, and the materials were taken possession of by the mob. Many papers destroyed, and the family and furniture thrown out of doors. We're gonna walk by that in just a second, but the printing shop was just right over there. When you go to the Independence Visitor Center and you take the tour, downstairs they have a recreation of the shop. And here's another plaque. I know that we've already seen these before, but now I have more information about these sites. This one is plaque number 6, Public Square. Mormon Sidney Rigdon preached at the courthouse in 1832. The increasing tension culminated in the tar and feathering of Bishop Partridge and Charles Allen on the 20th of July, 1833. Missouri Mormon Frontier Foundation. So I think what I'd like to do, let's just take a seat over here. So I just read you from History of the Church another thing that took place on the 20th of July, the burning of the print shop. Okay, the next section is the mob's treatment of Edward Partridge. So what I'm about to read to you happened like in this area that I'm at right now, and that's why that marker is right there. The mob proceeded to violence toward Edward Partridge, the bishop of the church, as he relates in his autobiography. I was taken from my house, which, by the way, if you just go down that way and you go to the north side of the Community of Christ Temple, there's a marker there indicating that that's where his house was at. He basically lived where the temple is right now. I was taken from my house by the mob, George Simpson being their leader, who escorted me about half a mile to the courthouse on the public square in Independence. And then, and there, a few rods from said courthouse, surrounded by hundreds of the mob, I was stripped of my hat, coat, and vest, and daubed with tar from head to foot, and then had a quantity of feathers put upon me, and all this because I would not agree to leave the county and my home where I lived 2 years. Before tarring and feathering me, I was permitted to speak. I told them that the saints had suffered persecution in all ages of the world, that I had done nothing which ought to offend anyone, and that that if they abused me, they should abuse an innocent person, that I was willing to suffer for the sake of Christ, but to leave the country, I was not then willing to consent to it. By this time, the multitude made so much noise that I could not be heard. Some were cursing and swearing, saying, "Call upon your Jesus," etc. Others were equally noisy and trying to still the rest, that they might be enabled to hear what I was saying. Until after I had spoken, I knew not what they intended to do with me, whether to kill me, to whip me, or what else, I knew not. I bore my witness with so much resignation and meekness that it appeared to astound the multitude, who permitted me to retire in silence, many looking very solemn, their sympathies having been touched as I thought. And as to myself, I was filled with the spirit of love of God, that I had no hatred toward my persecutors or anyone else. The next section is called Charles Allen. Charles Allen was next stripped and tarred and feathered because he would not agree to leave the county or deny the Book of Mormon. Others were brought up to be served, likewise were whipped. So I guess we don't know the names of the other people that were here with them. But I think that these are the only two that were tarred and feathered. But from some cause, the mob excuse me, the mob ceased operations and adjourned until Tuesday the 23rd. Elder Cindy Gilbert, the keeper of the store, which is that store right there. And by the way, after I made that video at the cemetery, Mound Grove Cemetery, that has a headstone for the victims of Zion's Camp, I saw what I thought was his name on there, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't 100% sure. But afterwards I found out, yes, he's one of the ones that died from cholera at Zion, during Zion's Camp. So him and Newell K. Whitney had this store in Independence. Let's go over here a little bit. Elder Cindy Gilbert, the keeper of the store, agreed to close it. That may have been one reason why the work of destruction was suddenly stopped 2 days. Reflections of the Prophet. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll continue on down that way. In the course of this day's wicked, outrageous, and unlawful proceedings, many solemn realities of human degradation as well as thrilling incidents were presented to the saints. An armed and well-organized mob in a government professing to be governed by law, with the Lieutenant Governor Lilburn W. Boggs, the second officer in the state, calmly looking on and secretly aiding every moment or every movement, saying to the saints, "You now know what our Jackson boys can do, and you must leave the county." Okay, let's see. I'm probably gonna go ahead and end it there. I have a little bit more, but I want to focus on walking and getting warm. Right now it's in the 30s, so it's a little bit hard to read and concentrate. But just right up here at this Mixed Mutt and Company store, you have a marker for the print shop. This one is marker number 8. Printing office, lot 75. Church printer W.W. Phelps published the first paper in Independence, the Evening and Morning Star, in June 1832. On July 1833, the printing office was demolished. Missouri Mormon Frontier Foundation. So these are the 2 days that we just read. These are the 2 days that were referred to by Emily Partridge. She talked about the fact that Lilburn Boggs was the secret spring of those 2 days. So when I first read that, I wasn't exactly sure what she was referring to, but now I know. So let's go ahead and go down this way to the second place that he lived in Independence. Right here on Kansas Street, to the east, you see that white building right there, that old white building. That's the original courthouse. That's the courthouse that's being referred to in scripture when it says that the temple is supposed to be built a little west of the courthouse. That's not its original location. It's actually moved around a couple different places, from what I understand. But it used to be on the public square where the current courthouse is. And then just right up there you can see the Community of Christ Temple. Now, what's interesting And I don't know that he intended to do this, but I kind of feel like there's something to it. The second place that Lilburn Boggs lived is actually within the city plat for the city of Zion. If everything had gone according to plan, they would have built the city. And I can't remember the dimensions of it, but essentially it was a square. It may have been something like a mile by a mile square, but it was all planned out. In the center there would have been the 2 city blocks for the 24 temple complex, and then all the rest of the city, as far as anybody knows, the rest of the city was just residential. There wasn't anything for schoolhouses or businesses, just the 24 temples on the 2 blocks, and then the rest of it was just private residences. And the spot where Lilburn Boggs chose to live after he came back to Independence was within the city plat. Not that there was a city as it was planned, so he probably wasn't really thinking about that, but I just think that's kind of interesting. Oh, it is really cold today. But it's nice because at least while I'm making these videos, I don't have to worry about my GoPro overheating. That happened a bunch of times when I first started this channel, because it was right in the middle of summer and it was hot and it was humid. I learned a couple different ways that I can make it so that the GoPro wouldn't overheat. But by the time I did, it was already starting to kind of cool down. It was transitioning from every day being in the 90s down to the 80s, like 80s and upper 70s. Let's see, Jackson County Technology Center, Public Works Department. Yeah, so we're just walking up here a little ways to a road called Pleasant Street. And on another on another day, there's another location that I'd like to show you, which is the location, I'd have to look it up again, but I think it's the first chapel from our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, after we were, like, the first chapel in Independence since the Saints were expelled in 1833. The chapel is no longer there, but we do know the location. Okay, I'm starting to double guess myself, because this road looks a lot like what I remember the last time that we were here. But I think it's supposed to be up here on Pleasant Street. Okay, yeah, no, I got it wrong. It is on Spring Street. I was recently talking about Pleasant Street with somebody, and so that's why I think I got it mixed up. I was right that this looks familiar. Okay, so this is what happened. Let me pull up my timeline again. Okay, so Lilburn Boggs became governor after the governor before him, Daniel Dunklin, resigned. I'm not sure why he resigned, but that's what happened. And I guess being lieutenant governor, that's why he became governor. And he was governor from 1836 to 1840. So 1836, that's essentially the far west period, far west, Adirondack. Okay, so at that point he moved to Jefferson City. So all the way up until then he was in Independence, but then he moved to the capital city of Missouri. And then October 27th, 1838, that's when he signed Missouri Executive Order 44, otherwise known as the Extermination Order. And then 1842, or possibly a little bit before that, according to what I read, he moved back to Independence. And this is where he moved, right up here. The plaque is right by this tree. And so what happened was, May 6th of 1842, someone showed up at his house at night, and it was raining, and they shot him. And at first they thought he was dead. One of the bullets went through his neck, and they actually thought he was dead, but then he made a recovery. And Orrin Porter Rockwell, I'm sure most of you know who that is, but he was the bodyguard of Joseph Smith. He became a suspect. All right, so let's go ahead and read. Sorry, let me put this in my pocket. Let's go ahead and read what it says right here. Okay, Governor Boggs issued the 1838 extermination order that led to the expulsion of the Mormons from Missouri in 1842. O.P. Rockwell was accused and acquitted of the assassination attempt at this site. Missouri Mormon Frontier Foundation. So that clears up my confusion about like the timeline and what that was about, and you know, Lilburn Boggs living in these two different sites in Independence, and where he was at when he was governor. So he first lived up there. Once he became governor, moved to Jefferson City. After that, came back here. There was an assassination attempt. Orrin Porter Rockwell was a suspect. And from what I read, Orrin Porter Rockwell was in custody for like a year as he was awaiting trial. So that's just a little bit upsetting if you're him or his friends and family. And then if I remember right, there is another marker, if we go back to the downtown area, which we'll probably do in another video. There's another marker that I think marks the site where he was held, where he was imprisoned. The last time we were here, we actually started off across the railroad over there, and we had checked this site out. It's a railroad museum, and that was the first time on this channel that I saw anything about Jim Bridger. I didn't know why they had a statue of him over there. Just a few videos ago, we went to his gravesite, which is actually here in Independence. He's the one that's credited as having discovered the Great Salt Lake. He also had a rocky relationship with the Saints and actually led Johnston's army to Utah because he was familiar with how to get there and how to lead them there. But anyway, I don't know. Growing up, whenever I heard about Governor Boggs, I guess I just pictured him, I don't know, I guess at the state capitol, but kind of like far removed from where the Saints were, and you know, signing that order from his office. But I had no idea that he also played this active role here in Independence before becoming governor. And then I had absolutely no idea about this assassination attempt and that Orrin Porter Rockwell got caught up in that. I was recently in Utah, and our Airbnb was in Saratoga Springs, and we were going back and forth between the Salt Lake Valley and Utah Valley, and somewhere around there, somewhere around the point of the mountain, I remember seeing a road that's named after Orrin Porter Rockwell. I know a lot of people are really interested in him. I think there's a lot of interesting stories about his life. My mom is a big fan. I don't know much. Up until today, I didn't really know anything about him other than the fact that he was the bodyguard of Joseph Smith, and the prophet told him to not cut his hair, similar to the Bible with Samson. But it kind of makes me want to learn more. But yeah, the more I learn about Independence and just church history in general, the more I want to go back in time and actually witness everything as it went down. Because I'm forming these pictures in my mind. Now I know the sites and where everything took place, so it's giving me a clearer picture in my mind. But it's crazy. I think about my ancestor Levi Jackman, that until this year I didn't know that he lived here in Jackson County. He didn't live in Independence. He was west of here in Kaw Township, where modern day Kansas City is. But he was in what was known as the Timber Branch, also known as the Whitmer Branch, because that's where David Whitmer was at the time. But he records in his journal what happened here in these key dates. I want to say that he talked about July 20th and maybe 23rd, but July 20th for sure. And I'm gonna have to go back. I don't think he mentioned where he crossed the Missouri River to go to Clay County, but I wonder if he came over here to Independence Landing, or if there was another crossing. Because when I was reading in Sacred Place in Missouri, it talked about that there were a few different crossings, but it seems like Independence Landing was probably the main one that was used by the Saints. But yeah, it's just so you know, so we got historic downtown over there, and that's basically where Independence was. You know, it's not as big as it is now, obviously. It was a small area, and it was all basically right there. So historic downtown, and then you know, the temple lot and what was supposed to become the city of Zion right there. And then you have the expulsion that takes place, and they just go, you know, straight north. Right where the temple lot is, you have River Boulevard, and that's basically the original trail to go up to Old Independence Landing to cross the Missouri River. It's just a very small area. But anyway, okay. Well, that's gonna be for this one. I'll talk to you guys later. Okay, actually I'm not done. This is probably one of my worst videos. It's so choppy. I wanted to mention what happened after the assassination attempt. So after returning to independence, he was once again a state senator. So his political career went like this in Missouri. He was a state senator, 1826, 1828, and then lieutenant governor, 1832 to 1836, and then governor, 1836 to 1840, and then back to being a state senator. And then in 1846, he left Missouri and he went to Sonoma, California. And it's interesting because his company that traveled there, his party, whatever you want to call it, I don't know why, but a bunch of them separated, and the ones that separated ended up becoming the Donner Party that everybody knows about. So I thought that was interesting. And then once he got to California, he continued his political career. He was elected to the California State Assembly, which is part of their lower house. I guess it's like the kind of like the, I think it is essentially the House of Representatives for California. I don't know if that's what it's still called today, the California State Assembly. And then he died in 1860. And then fast forward all the way to 1976, and that's when the extermination order was finally rescinded. So it was still on the books for that entire time. And it's fitting that it was rescinded in 1976 because that was the bicentennial of the United States, a country that has the Constitution that guarantees religious freedom. So it's very fitting. And actually, you know what? This is really good. We're ending the video here. This is the Missouri Independence Mission Home. So not too far from his house, you have this symbol of our return to Jackson County and Missouri as a whole, and how our missionary efforts are moving forward. So it didn't work. It didn't work, Governor Boggs. We are back. Okay, that's it for this one. I'll talk to you later.